Hi there, my name is Grant McCarty. I'm a local foods and small farms extension educator with the University of Illinois Extension, serving Daviess-Stephenson and Winnebago counties. This week on Get Growing, we're talking potatoes. What happens when a potato flowers? When can you start harvesting potatoes? And how can you grow potatoes in containers? In northern Illinois, we typically plant potatoes on Good Friday. And I know that that date varies every single year, but many folks in northern Illinois will typically do that. The potato plants that you see here were both planted in mid-April. And so we're now looking at 8 weeks of growth with both of these that have produced pretty significantly. One of the things that you do have to do as you're growing potatoes is to come in and hill them. Typically when the plant is 8 to 10 inches tall is when you would do this hilling process, where you're actually digging up the soil and putting it around the plant, kind of mounding it, if you will. You may also find that you've had to bring in some soil or some compost, which is sometimes what I run into with my backyard is to do that. If you have yet to do any hilling, this is a very good time to go ahead and do that, because that can really provide much greater support for the potato plant as it starts to develop and it starts to create those potatoes that you're really after this season. Once the potato plant begins to flower, it's now focusing on its next growth stage. It's no longer focused on the leaves, it's no longer focusing on its height, it now is focusing on the potatoes. And what this means is that if you wait 2 to 3 weeks after this flowering has appeared, you could start to harvest new potatoes. New potatoes are some of those very small initial potatoes that begin to develop underground around your potato plant. It doesn't mean you're going to be removing this plant fully after 2 to 3 weeks. It just means that if you take a shovel and you kind of dig around the plant, you may begin to find some of those very small potatoes that you could then use in your cooking. Potatoes do really well in containers, but you have to decide on the right container to use. One of the main challenges that you run into is that most of these containers actually have drainage at the base of that container. And so as water is entering into that container, it's only coming out at the bottom of that planter. When you're growing a plant like a potato or a sweet potato and you're focusing on that root development, you really don't want that plant to sit in so much water. You want it to take up the water, but you also want to make sure that it is being drained properly. One of the types of containers that we're growing in this season is the one that you see here. This is a felt fabric type of bag. And the advantage with this type of material is that it allows for drainage fully around the container. It also has drainage at the bottom. So the water can enter into the container, it can be taken up by the plant, but it can also leave from that container too. Another challenge you've got to consider is that most containers that you're growing vegetables in, you're using a soilless growing media. And what this really means is that it's a material that can allow for drainage, can allow for nutrients to be taken up by the plant. But it also typically has very low nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and many other nutrients that your plants have. And so you really need to, sometimes on a weekly basis, be addressing the fertilizer needs of the potato plants that you might be growing. When you compare the potatoes that are growing in this bag with the ones that are growing in the field, they look very similar. The height is what we expect, they both have flowered at the same time, and the foliage is that green color that we see with the field potatoes too. So I fully expect very similar yields between my container potatoes and the ones that I'm growing in my field this season. So that's this week on Get Growing. Remember, this is just a mid-season potato update. You're not ready for that full potato harvest just yet. Look for a video in the near future that can provide an overview on how you would fully harvest from the potato plants that you're growing this season. For more information on resources and upcoming events, please visit extension.illinois.edu/JSW or follow us on Facebook at Northwest Illinois Local Foods.